Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier as Everton exit the third round of the FA Cup, extending their trophy drought yet another year after falling to Sunderland. 1-1 in regular time, 3-0 in the penalty shootout to the visitors. A frustrating afternoon. We're going to break it down as best we can. Before we get into it, just a reminder that if you enjoy the show, do us a solid, leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, or like, subscribe, and leave us a comment on YouTube if you're watching. With that, we go to the summary quote of the day. I think this is a good one. Really easy to be frustrated, but I think Suburban Guy puts it into good perspective here. The comment is, not many options with the squad. Glad to see Aznou get a run and make an impact. Another cup exit, but the focus is on improving as this team isn't winning trophies, ... yet. Hard to be too upset, terrible pens notwithstanding. On to Villa, up the Toffees. It's super frustrating to pretty much suck the entire match and then get given a gift via the penalty at the very death, get all the way to penalties, and then just throw up a complete stinker. I think there are maybe a couple positives to take from this match. Firstly being, we saw Tark and O'Brien pushed back to being partners at center back. Your thoughts on the duo today?
Well, it's good to see, right? And because that also puts Nathan Patterson at right back, and I think we've been, of course, just his career at Everton has just been an interesting one, but I think just given the opportunity to actually put a right back at their specific position and Jake at center back where we know he's a lot better, was good to see. So I think that was curious. And of course, one thing to mention, the appeal got denied for Michael Keane, right? So we'll see that center back duo most likely for Villa and for Leeds. So that of course, unfortunate with just the Premier League and PGMOL. David Moyes had some scathing words for them, but at the same time, to talk about the center-back partnership, excited for this one just because I think we've been asking for it for a while. Feels like the only way we're going to get Jake to basically start at center back is with Keane being out and with Jared being out, because as soon as Jared comes back, it'll be interesting to see, right, if Jake just basically goes back at right back or what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it will be interesting. I thought Jake and Tark did okay for the most part today. We'll talk about the goal and whatnot, but it is just great to see Jake playing in his natural position, even though it does mean, of course, Nathan Patterson gets into the side, and I don't think he really covered himself in glory today in particular, though he did work hard and went the full distance, so we'll give him some credit there, given that he's probably lacking match fitness for how little he's played. Second point, this match highlighted as much as any match in the recent past just how bare bones this Everton team is, and how, frankly, we couldn't afford two players being suspended, because it leaves you with a very thrown together Everton lineup and then very few options off the bench. Normally these early cup rounds for teams that are more well established does present an opportunity to get some of these younger guys in optionally. In this case, they were kind of thrust into the spotlight. Of course, Harrison Armstrong, we saw Reece Welch, and others given the opportunity today. Sean, anyone stand out to you? We saw Armstrong get his second Everton start. Maybe something to take as a positive from this one?
Yeah, I mean, Armstrong, I think, is kind of the one to build off the performance. And as we talked about it, it's almost like you wonder what would happen if we didn't call him back from loan, right? So it's good to see him getting minutes. I think it's just, unfortunate with Tyler today, just probably one of his tougher days. But it's just, for me, I want to continue to see that attacking intent. I just think instructionally, right, he is probably trying to be asked to play a little bit more conservative role and to not be able to really kind of get support when he's kind of in the corner. And so those are kind of tough things, and hopefully it's not something that's kind of held against him for the future, and it's just something that, is more of a teaching, coaching moment. Merlin, I think for me, is just getting minutes at this point, right? Like it feels like he's still not healthy. I still, am very positive about him. I can understand the frustration with him because it doesn't seem like he's really doing too much. But I really think that it's just good that he's getting minutes. And then, of course, we'll talk about the, real youngster that got, an electric few minutes that really kind of galvanized the team. And obviously he wasn't even on this list, right? Like when I put this on, just because it wasn't expected. It was just kind of optimistically thought about. So, yeah, I mean, it's just good that's a positive I take from today, right, is that these guys are going to continue to get some minutes, and I think it's in a meaningful game, right? So it's something for them to kind of take take back and learn from.
I mean, this is a high pressure situation for these guys. I know there isn't really a ton of pressure on Everton to like win the FA Cup this season, but it's your last real opportunity at a trophy nevertheless, and to put Dibling in that position, to put Rohl in that position, Armstrong, out of necessity, and in a really just difficult spot for them to succeed, right? What you want to, I think, ideally see for these young guys is they're plugged into a full-strength, otherwise team with much better talent around them, and they're not as much pressure on them to really kind of run the show. And we saw Armstrong, I think, kind of take control of the game at certain points, certainly for Everton kind of going forward, and he ran his socks off the entire match, so credit to him. Rohl, again, and Dibling, I agree with you. Looked a little bit lost, but Dibling is just struggling, I think, for confidence right now, and I think David Moyes probably has to shoulder some of the responsibility there. He hasn't exactly given him a platform to grow in confidence. And he also just, with Patterson behind him, is always going to be kind of a big challenge. He doesn't have the outlet or the support. So I'm not drawing any major conclusions around any of the players today, except for, as you mentioned, alluded to Adam Aznou, who we'll talk about shortly. But we'll get into the match in just a moment, like talking through it, kind of how things unfolded. The new kits, though, before we even start talking about the match, Everton come out for a home match in a pink and black kit that I didn't hear anything about. I don't know. I literally sat down to turn on the game. I was like, did I miss an announcement? Did I miss some media rollout from the club? We're wearing what we already have a black kit, and yet we're going with a second one. And we have this comment from Toffee Liz from our Discord, who funnily slept through almost the entire regulation, woke up right as we were headed into extra time and said, just woke up. Are we wearing warm-up tops or something? And it kind of did look like that, Sean. What did you think as you were starting? And it was early for you. It was a 5 a.m. kickoff for you out in Colorado. So your thoughts, because it really kind of just took me by surprise.
I didn't even think of it until somebody mentioned it. Like, it was just, to me, I was just watching the game and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then somebody mentioned the kits and I was like, oh, and then you see it. And then, of course, like just doing a quick little research, like, it was on the club website like 6 hours ago. It makes me like optimistic, because if they could do this with a new like jersey sign, basically kind of reveal, can they do this with a new signing? Like just not have any sort of kind of, announcement, rumors about it, and just completely like bring it on the field. So no, I think it looks fine. I mean, I think others have polarizing opinions of it. I think kits are kind of one where no matter what you think, I can appreciate it, just because to each their own. But yeah, to me, it wasn't like the coloring book or whatever that I believe the third kit was.
Squiggles.
So yeah, the squid. Yeah. So I think it's fine. I feel very indifferent, Switzerland on this one.
Agreed. Just not really too impressed with Everton's kit situation at the moment. Mostly the sponsorships just make it, I think, unappealing. I think we're both on record on that front. However, I know you got obviously the white kit, the cream kit, which is a beautiful one of the best we've had in some time. In any case, Sean, we talked about how thin Everton are. On the other hand, Sunderland, we know they've come up. They've had I think, season so far that has exceeded even some of the more wild expectations of their fan base, and now they're eyeing the cup. And no secret, they added quite a few members to their team over the summer. They have a pretty deep team as far as just numbers-wise, and going for a pretty strong team in the FA Cup against Everton today.
Yeah, quite incredible for them. Of course, having a great season still, I think the fear for AFCON was that it would really destroy them, and it really hasn't. They've had a few tough results, but no different than most clubs in December with the fixtures piling. And they've gotten a few of those guys back. Of course, none other than Noah Siddiqui, who had the biggest temper tantrum the last time we played them. But you look at just Regis Labrise has been able to rotate his squad, and it's still an incredible, starting 11 to kind of, feature for the cup. And so I think you look at the back line. Of course, Norton Mukuele is kind of the one that's been playing a lot. Trey Hume has also been playing a ton, Ryan's favorite right back. And then you look at, of course, Luke O'Neill and then Sirkin, who just kind of rotate in, both decent players. Robin Roofs has been kind of one of the best keepers this year, so he's definitely somebody that is probably kind of in the running for, if there was a award goalkeeper of the year, he's definitely kind of entitled to that. Granted, Jacques, I can't say enough about him, has done a really, really good job. And you put him next to an athletic, a midfielder like Habib Diarra or Noah Siddiqui, you're going to see a lot of great things. And then you look at that front three. I mean, it's rotated somewhat. Of course, Talbi is out due to AFCON, and then you have Habib, but you look at Simone Adingra, Enzo Lefebvre, and then, of course, Mundell, who's kind of the person to come in, and then you look at Mayenda up top. Will Isidore is kind of the one that's been starting, as well as Brian Brobby, so they've kind of had a bit of rotation there. But it's not a luxury that Everton have right now, right? So it's just if you asked me 2 months ago, I would think that the kind of roles would reverse, right? And Everton being a lot deeper with their squad, of course, just losing the 2 guys from AFCON, but not having 7 other first teamers out. So this is kind of unprecedented times for us, and even just losing Tim, right, in the kind of the early moments right before the match, not knowing that he would be out as well. So it's just Murphy's Law right now when it comes to Everton with injuries.
Yeah, it's exactly as you say. And look, we're no strangers to thin teams. Like, Everton have been as thin as it gets as far as Premier League quality in the last 3 or 4 years. And even with all those issues, this might be the thinnest we've ever been. You've got the AFCON guys. You've got guys suspended. And then, as you just mentioned, Tim Irabuna misses out with a knock. We've got Charlie still out with, we don't even know what his injury is. So it really makes you scratch your head, but Tim out, so that gives Rohl the opportunity to come in, partnering alongside Garner, which I'd think you'd agree probably. Seeing him play a little bit deeper probably suits his profile a little bit better versus shoehorned in at the 10 where Harrison Armstrong goes instead. We get Dwight over on the left. Beto rotates in for Thierno Barry. So it's not all bad, but there are some just gaping holes in this squad still, and in this team, extremely thin. I think it shows David Moyes was still trying to take this pretty seriously, that Jordan Pickford gets the nod. No sign of Mark Travers or Tom King not getting the early round cup runs. If we were in a better place, maybe that's a platform for them. But when 6 or 7 of your regular starters are out, you kind of have to play the ones that you still have available. And I think this one started pretty much Sunderland front foot, and Everton's game plan was pretty clear. And they were threatening. Everton really struggling, I think, not just with the lack of quality, but a lot of guys who are just not familiar with each other too. And so you saw a bit of a lack of cohesion, not much in the way of planning and clear tactical instruction from Moyes, which maybe you can forgive because it's been such a fast run of fixtures and a lot of sort of pivoting at the last moment in terms of game planning due to injury. But still, lack of quality. Hill Dickinson Stadium clearly frustrated in the early stages. And Sunderland looked good. They looked threatening. There were a couple back and forth shots. Everton created nothing really of note. And then the first goal from Sunderland is obvious quality. Enzo Lefebvre. However, you have to call question into Everton's, set piece defending, because it starts off of a long throw. And we have 3 players, Mikolenko, Beto, and Jake O'Brien, some pretty big bodies in there, all challenging for that first ball out of the air. Nobody wins it, lets it hit the ground, which is like a no-no for defending any kind of set piece. Merlin Rohl manages to get that kind of slight touch on it. But I think it's Mayenda who plays it to Lefebvre, and this is an unbelievable, it's just a really good full volley. We know what a quality player he is and what a coup it was for Sunderland to sign him in the championship last season, and he shows it here.
Yeah, so much wrong with this goal. I think you could take your pick. Of course, it's a good throw into the box, right? I think that's just one of those things where we kind of miss the first ball and then you really kind of leave it to chance. I don't understand why 3 guys are on him. If 3 guys are on him, take the ball, right? Like, it's just, you can't just have 3 guys shadow. You had essentially just 1 guy covering and 2 guys shadowing. And then, like you mentioned, it's a really good hold-up play from him to kind of just lay it off pretty neatly to Lefebvre, who it's a great finish. And, you could criticize Tyler Dibling in regards to not being closer to his man. I can accept that, but I also think too, once again, it's just, we talked about it kind of early. It's just, there's no structure right now. So I don't expect cohesion on these specific things. I understand they practice these things, time in and time out, but this is kind of if you looked at an archetype of a goal that right now is just for a team that's not well organized or well drilled, given the personnel, I think this is a pretty good one to choose from.
Yeah, I think so. Quality of the finish aside, there's just no excuse. Once you miss that first ball and it bounces, kind of all planning goes out the window, right? Because it's just, that invites chaos. It invites them to just sort of bobble it around and see what happens, but they maintain their composure in the box and I think go ahead deservedly at this point. And then it kind of ensues that a lot of frustrating play from Everton, both as we get to half. There were a couple moments maybe of positivity. Dwight McNeil, in about 5 minutes later, has a nice run forward. Mykolenko was looking for a goal today. You got to give the man credit. If no one else was, Mykolenko was looking to be our savior. I think he had 3 or 4 shots from distance, none of which were all that great, but you got to give the guy some credit for at least trying to put something on net. This shot that he takes looked like it was tipped wide, but we don't get the call. Very well, let's talk about that later. The lack of VAR would obviously play a pretty significant role. Just before half, Mukiele tries that bike on the corner, which was a really good save from Pickford and a really good take. And then right as we get to half, Mykolenko again shooting one from distance, gets over the bar. But you look at the halftime stats, and not much to really rejoice or celebrate from an Everton creation standpoint. 0.16 non-penalty XG to Sunderland's 0.48. Sunderland's expected goals on target, 2.2. Impossible to deny that the visitors deserve to be deservedly ahead at the break.
I mean, you saw the way David Moyes went into the tunnel. I mean, he was absolutely fuming, right? And I think we talked about it. This is the 5th game in 14 days, right? So it's just, I think you can understand that this is a pretty tough performance given the personnel, but I also think too that there is a certain level that needs to be improved, right, for the current 11 that was on the field. And I do think we saw that kind of after the second half started, and you see that in the 48th minute. Beto getting an early header on target, right, our first shot on goal. So that was good to see. But yeah, I think then we started to kind of get into this hoofball strategy, which I don't think was anything that was going to help us, try to get that first goal.
Agreed. And I actually was looking at some of the numbers. The long balls from Everton were actually, in terms of completion, we were right around 50% for the entire match. And I think in the first half as well. The problem is that you go down a goal, allows Sunderland to obviously kind of invite pressure a little bit. They don't have to be as aggressive coming out. And then so much of what you rely on to break teams down when they're set up more defensively is individual quality, and that's just missing from Everton. So you see this resorting to long balls, and really a lot of deep crosses as well, just kind of on the edges of the pitch, trying to launch things into the box. Mykolenko, Dwight, Patterson, all looking to just sort of get it in anytime they had any space, launch it into the box, and hope that one of our forwards can get on the end of it. And unfortunately, the quality of cross was just also not there. So that's your strategy, not being executed well, missing the individual quality. It's not really a recipe for success, to be fair. And so you're wondering, well, how are we going to switch things up? How is Everton going to change this game? By introducing a little bit of fire, maybe. There was the Mundle and Garner coming together. Garner, I think, took like an elbow to the neck, and then there was maybe a little kick out on his part, a little feisty fight being shown by Garner, who I thought was pretty good today for the most part. So that, I think, maybe got the crowd into it a little bit. Definitely some disinterest and frustration bleeding through the atmosphere. You could feel it even through the TV. Sunderland get kind of a head of steam going in the 62nd. Mayenda was very good. Again, only 20 years old. Quality day for him. Creates some space and rolls a shot just a couple feet wide. Right after that, Mykolenko with yet another shot. And in the 70th minute, it's interesting that Labrie is the first one to make changes. Not surprising, but interesting. And Moyes doesn't really have many options, as we know. But he takes off Adingra and Mayenda, brings on Brian Brobby and Dan Ballard. Some additional size, changing the forward options a little bit. Even that, I mean, Dan Ballard's okay. Brobby, I think we like as a player. Just much more interesting for options off the bench for Sunderland. And then Thierno Barry comes on for Tyler Dibling. And we talked about Dibling's performance a little bit. Not his best day, but definitely looks very low on confidence, Sean. Your thoughts on that substitution for Moyes? Were you surprised?
Yeah, I think I was surprised. I know most of the kind of community and Discord wasn't. I can fully, if I was just thinking from Moyes' perspective, he didn't have a good game, right? So if there was a game to take him off, this would be the game. However, I counterpoint to that to say, who else on the pitch would is kind of willing to, take these guys on. And even when Dibling was kind of struggling a little bit, right, it's just more of the position he was getting the ball versus him just kind of taking guys on. There were some moments where he needs to kind of understand, right, dribbling in your own half earlier in the first half, right, that's not something you need to do. But once again, I think it just comes down to, like, if we're looking kind of to take guys on, right, like, who would you rather have, Tyler Dibling or Dwight McNeil? And it's just, I could understand it if we're up 1-0 and you're trying to get more of a defensive option there, you keep Dwight on, sure. But I just, it didn't make sense to me, especially given that he was kind of the only guy I feel like capable of just kind of creating something other than the other person that comes on after him, right? So, yeah, it just... I don't see how this helps his confidence, right? Like, I just, to me, I understand, and I'm sure David Moyes will talk to him, because there's been some kind of reports on, when he's been substituted, kind of some of the, performances and going through where he needs to improve. So I hope that happens again. But yeah, it's just been a frustrating start for Dibling so far in his Everton career.
Yeah, it's really kind of hard to put your finger on, because we don't know everything that's going on behind closed doors, but it just feels like there's a combination of the manager not really setting the player up for success, but then also I think you do have to maybe you have to say, like, Dibling hasn't, bar a couple of performances, hasn't, shown, I think, what he's capable of. And when he's not given consistent minutes, I think it's harder to do that. But look, people say, like, writing Dibling off, I think time will just prove you to be completely wrong. I think he's a very good player and will come good, but he has to be given the platform to do it. And in this team today for Everton, did look to at least try to make something happen. You think about the other options we have. Dwight had a couple decent dribbles and did okay kind of driving the ball forward from the left. Dibling, I think, tries to do a little too much sometimes. I think he just needs to, like, release the ball and do some of the stuff off the ball more, where he just wants to get it to feet and try to do everything, take the man on, what this Everton team needs, no question. But I think sometimes it's just forced a little bit right now. He's kind of struggling to find the rhythm. You could tell he grows frustrated because he's looking for, like, he'll get the ball, he'll drive forward, and then no one goes with him. He has no option. All of a sudden he has three guys on him, no one to give it to. He's kind of in no man's land. So, again, not his best performance. He was 1 for 6 in duels, 1 for 2 in dribbles. But I just don't want this to be like a longer term, this to have any kind of long-term implications for him, for the manager, because I think Moyes now will say, okay, well, I had to pull you at halftime last time. I give you the start, and you don't quite take advantage of it again. But again, he might just not have the option, so he'll probably play out of necessity going forward. And enough on that, because this is where things get really interesting, right? This is where things start to get a little bit fun, pretty much the only fun that we have as Everton fans on the day. We see, as the game wears on, gets into the mid-80 minutes mark, and Adam Aznou, from Sleazy from our Discord. Aznou, light calisthenics before the final whistle time, because, of course, just a few matches ago we saw that, thought he might get on, and he ultimately does get on in about the 85th minute. And Sean, I mean, this is the most instant impact sub appearance from an Everton player debuting in a really long time, maybe since the Ademola Lookman days. Of course, winning the penalty, we can talk about whether we should have had that penalty or not, but looked bright from the very first moment. Sean, your impressions of the Aznou sub and then the subsequent couple moments.
Yeah, I mean, the Aznou sub I was so excited for, right, just for the kid. It would have been heartbreaking for him to get ready a second time and then not be able to get into the game. So just more than anything, credit to Moyes for putting him in. And I think for me, he just looked like a bull out of a china shop, just wanting to get involved, and just kind of that really, like, energy that the game needed at that point, right? Because at this point you have nothing to lose, right? And I think he sees that as well. But I think he kind of did it in a way where I don't think he was actually trying to do a significant amount, right? He was just trying to kind of show that, hey, I have energy, I have pace, I'm willing to kind of, take the ball and do something with it. And this is kind of just a weird play, because he kind of like pinballs it for a while and then is able to kind of put himself in a position where, I mean, you're forcing the ref to make a choice. And I think also too, maybe something that could have been on the ref's mind is the Beto moment earlier, right, where that wasn't a penalty. So was it a penalty in my mind? Absolutely not. VAR definitely would have rescinded that, but at the same token, would VAR looked at the Beto incident and maybe kind of had a second opinion. So I'm choosing to be optimistic with finally getting something and VAR being able to just not interject. And credit to Jimmy Garner, right? I think that was my second question. Who would take the penalty? Imagine if it was Adam Aznou, right? That would have been comical. But Beto, I think, was the first one to come to mind because he's taken penalties for us before. But he steps up and it's a good penalty. And it's just kind of crazy, right, James? Because a lifeless pretty much game really didn't create much at all. Could have been down 2-0 easily just with some of the things that Sunderland was doing, and it's 1-1.
Yeah, I mean, this is like maybe one of the highlight moments of the season for me, and it comes in a frustrating, ultimately a loss, but for Adam Aznou to come on after all the things that have been said about him without really getting a good look at the kid, and for him to come in and just immediately provide the spark that Everton need. And no, it's not a penalty. It's never a penalty. It's not even close. I think he wins the challenge going in for it. But Adam Aznou is in the box, retaining the ball really well, looks so quick and agile. It's just a different level of athleticism to what we get from Mykolenko. And to see that so clearly, so immediately, it really makes you wonder where this kid has been. Obviously, coming on so late, there's tired legs. He has that advantage. But I was impressed with it, and he's not a big guy either. I mean, he's a pretty small kid. But he was throwing his body around. He was not afraid to get into challenges, challenged for a bunch of aerials, looked great. And as you say, it's James Garner who steps up. Credit to him for taking the responsibility in a big moment and for burying it. Getting us into extra time that was in no way, shape, or form deserved. But nevertheless, we go on, and you're thinking Everton might have the opportunity to snatch this one from the jaws of defeat. But and honestly, it looked like as we got into extra time that probably Everton were the team more likely to win it.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few good moments. Of course, it starts with Jordan Pickford save, but then outside of kind of the first 5 minutes, then Everton really kind of break in, and it just feels like, Harrison Armstrong once again, his first chance that he took in the first half was inches away, right? So he took it pretty well. And I liked kind of what Beto was doing as well. Just, he kind of found a second win a little bit in regards to the energy and trying to really bring that. And of course, just we know the guy hustles, if not anything more than that. But then you look at Everton break, right? Thierno Barry playing Beto in. Kind of tough, unfortunately. But I credit for him for trying to kind of hit with power, because at that point, it's just if you just kind of try to hit it with just more on the angle, I don't think he's going to beat Roofs. So, and then, this 14th minute sub was puzzling, but, Mykolenko, the attacking fullback that the ESPN announcers were just kind of lauding him for. I didn't realize Mykolenko was an attacking left back until today. So, thanks for educating me, ESPN. But he comes off Elijah Campbell, which... I don't know what your thoughts are, James, but that one was just a little puzzling to me.
I just think it's so late in the match. You needed fresh legs.
Sure.
And I think Mykolenko had worked hard. And actually, I think Mykolenko, despite the fact that I think he was way too involved offensively, no one else wanted to really push the envelope in the final third, so he did. And defensively, he was all right. So I thought Mykolenko had a pretty good game, but he was also running a lot. We had a lot of any really major things we had going forward were down the side, and Mykolenko was involved. Credit to him. I just think he's tired. We got to get some fresh legs, and at this point, Moyes is out of really any kind of senior firepower available. So you get the kids, and Eli Campbell comes on. Looked kind of like a fish out of water a little bit. Did not look too comfortable, but that's okay. It's a nervy moment. A high pressure situation to come on for Everton. And I don't really think he made any major mistakes that cost us. So, did what he needed to do. Takes us to halftime of extra time. Interesting that Brobby is pulled by Labrie coming out of the break at halftime. I don't know, because he had obviously come on as a sub, might have picked up a knock or something. He looked pretty frustrated on the touchline. But it's kind of the Adam Aznou show. And I really appreciated how much the Hill Dickinson really, anytime Aznou got on the ball, following him winning the penalty, you could feel the energy kind of building in the stadium. People, the expectation of a young player who's kind of unpredictable that can really change a game. And he does a really nice job drawing this yellow on Mukiele. Gets the hook around the neck as he's making the run by, and he sells it, but it's the right call. Nathan Patterson comes down with a little bit of cramp with about 5 minutes left and has to be pulled. So we see Reece Welch, yet another youngster. This is his third Everton appearance. And really, again, to get this to penalties, you have to say James Tarkowski plays a massive role, because right before extra time expires, Granit Xhaka, a well-placed kind of curling shot, and Tark positioned well with a really, really good block and deflection to send it wide for a corner. This was following a Dwight McNeil giveaway. So Everton kind of battle it out in the late stages, looking to get to penalties, which we do, setting the stage for probably the most disappointing penalty shootout that I can remember as an Everton fan. At least in terms of just completely botching it at every opportunity. Like, we've been in some close ones that went on, obviously Onana against Fulham being the most infamous one. But this was just stink, bye. Like, it was brutal.
Yeah, this didn't really kind of, entertain the folks that were just put your laces through it, right? Because they certainly did not do that. A lot of just, I think, more finesse penalties that I think when they land, they're really cool, but when they don't, and it's just kind of incredibly frustrating. But the hard part is I think none of those three guys, if our first 11 is healthy, are probably taking penalties, right? So I think that's the thing that really kind of frustrates me more than anything is just it's one of those where, of course, penalty shootouts they are a lottery ticket. Sean Dyche is not the only person that says that. It truly is. You just never know what can happen, and it is really disappointing from us. And I don't really think Jordan Pickford can kind of shoulder any sort of blame. I think all three penalties by the Sunderland folks, of course, Enzo Lefebvre, Granit Xhaka, and then Luke O'Neill, were all great. And yeah, it's just, like you said, James, just a very kind of sad way to kind of go out, just because I've seen a lot of penalty shootouts from Everton. Of course, we've won a few earlier in my fandom, not so recently, but that definitely is probably the worst of them all.
Yeah, just at no point Garner starts it off just horribly. I mean, it was just a really weak penalty, not placed well. Riffs has to guess the right way, but once he's done that, it's pretty much as he's falling over, he just gathers it. Barry and Beto, again, it's just, as you say, normally they wouldn't be the guys taking it. I don't know who else should be taking them in this situation. I mean, I guess maybe Dwight McNeil could take one. Tark, maybe, but at this point, Pickford. So they're probably the most likely candidates, but Barry goes for that hesitation, trying to place it, send the keeper the wrong way, and just doesn't work. And then Beto just kind of telegraphs where he's going with it before or as he's running up to it. So poor execution all around. It felt like it was close for Everton. Like, as you mentioned, it's a coin toss once you get to penalties. Maybe we'll just miracle our way into the next round, and then we'll be back to full strength by the time we play our next match. But not to be, and really, when you get down to brass tacks, probably didn't deserve to be. I think Sunderland are the deserved winners today. It would have, getting to extra time in the first place through the dodgy penalty, and then, lucking our way through a penalty shootout. Bridge too far right now for this Everton team would have been a bit of a miracle.
Yeah, tough week for Hill Dickinson. I mean, you kind of you lose against Brentford, draw against Wolves, and then lose this. So yeah, I think just from a momentum shift, right? It's a tough place to be. But I think, of course, we've talked about it. I think any team struggles with this amount of first-teamers out. And then you look at, it's not me trying to make excuses, it's just kind of the facts. 5 games in 14 days with kind of a bare-bones squad, right, it is tough. So I look forward to Everton having kind of an 8-day break and then getting back to kind of a normal schedule. You hope to see some of those other guys come back, both the AFCON and then even somebody like Jared, right? It would be great to have him as soon as we can, hopefully for the Leeds match. But yeah, it's a tough way to go out, right? It's never easy to kind of go out, but I will give the team credit for trying to kind of, get to a place where they made it interesting. And then, of course, in extra time, as you mentioned, James, I thought we played pretty decently. Of course, could have taken our chances better. But once again, we're a work in progress, right? So
yeah, just a bit of a transition. We have some listener comments. We're not going to do good performances today. I think we talked about really the noteworthy guys up to this point. We start with Kevin Dyer at Nebula1979. Always a great person to include because he has some of the most thoughtful comments. A soft call, but glad to see Aznou can actually play football. It's taken to the 85th minute of a cup tie in January to see him. Lively, quick feet, wants to get forward, points out the awful penalties from Barry and Beto. Garner excellent, defense sound, cup dream over. Really, you just have to talk about Adam Aznou more. Like, can we just talk about him nonstop because we've been wondering what the deal is with this kid. And really this pod has been very insistent that he should be given more opportunities to play. And there's been so many times this season when Everton have been trailing and looked for exactly what Adam Aznou brought from the first minute he stepped on the pitch to closing things out. That energy, that creativity, the on the ball, like dribbling, looking to take guys on, something that Mykolenko just does not have. Like nowhere in his locker is he really going to be able to dribble by guys. Adam showed that today. And, in a full start, things might be different, but it is good to see that maybe our scouts and our recruitment team were on to something when they decided to sign Adam Aznou. And I don't know, Sean, do we think this is a platform for him to get more playing time going forward?
I hope so. And it was interesting to kind of hear Moyes' presser after the game. A reporter asked him about Adam Aznou, and he was happy for him, but he mentioned kind of what we think is holding him back, and he needs to get physically stronger, right? So he actually mentioned that. But at the same time, he said, credit to Adam for, what he did today, and that's something he's going to kind of take back. So I would hope that, especially you look at kind of game state, if the team is losing, right? Like, in my opinion, there's no risk of kind of putting somebody like that on, just because I also thought that, of course, he's playing up, and that might be a consideration, right? If you want to kind of play him at left wing for this kind of short stint, I would still think that playing him at left back over Mykolenko while we are kind of trying to find a way to get back in the game is a better choice. But at the same time, right, whether he plays a little bit here or he goes on loan, one of those two things need to happen. I do not want to see just him continuing to just languish on the bench, getting no time. You can tell he really wants to play. I think just the opportunity today just gave me a lot of hope to just say he's not completely disheartened. I know that, the X comment was out there in regards to kind of, the shrug emoji. But at the same time, I think he took his opportunity today really well. And that's something that we've asked some of these other younger kids to do. And some have and some haven't, right? So credit to Adam Aznou. And that's why I'm very fortunate we went to extra time, because that's 30 minutes that we wouldn't have seen him. And I thought even, one thing we didn't talk about, put a lovely cross in, right, that just wasn't attacked by Thierno Barry or Beto. So he just did a lot of good things today. Of course, he made some mistakes, right, like anybody did trying to, but I felt like they were all progressive mistakes. So for me, I can accept that. Same with Tyler Dibling, right? It's just some of the other things we'll criticize him on, like dribbling in your own half and things like that. So no, very excited about it. And for me, it's just, even if it's a 5 to 10 minute cameo for a few different games, that's still enough for me to be at least somewhat optimistic. But if Moyes is clear that he's not going to play him, just loan him out.
Yeah, and I agree. Like as left wing, I think it's a little interesting that's where Moyes decided to bring him on. Doesn't quite trust him with the defensive side of things yet. I just think we're a little too deep at full strength for him to really get minutes there. It's just Mykolenko on the left. Like that's the only guy he has to play over. I just hope that we can see a little bit more of him. But agreed, like if Moyes doesn't view this as the rest of the season, again, we're out of any meaningful competition. We're now highly unlikely to get relegated. Now is the time to just sort of experiment and build for the future. I don't know if he still harbors that European dream or not, but I just think you saw a glimpse of what this kid can do. I think he'd be very foolish not to give him, at least starting with some more substitute opportunities. You got to at least give the kid a shot to earn his place in the team. For Dibling, we talked about him a little bit, kind of wondering how his playing time is going to be impacted going forward. We had this comment from Lexel Pre from our Discord. For having such a depleted squad, I don't think we could have asked for much more. We got to see what some young players could do against a good squad. Dibling had a rough game, but you can still see the potential. Thought he looked strongest when we looked strongest when pressing as a team and forcing Sunderland to make mistakes. Did not miss VAR at all. Sean, any final thoughts on Dibling? I think we talked about him quite a bit, but do we view this as being like something Moyes will hold against him?
I am a bit worried about him more than some of our other younger players. I just think there is a confidence loss with him, but at the same time, when we are at full strength, that's the time I would want to play him, right? And I just feel like he might not get that opportunity. Given that Iliman Ndiaye and Jack Grealish, right, are ahead of him. So it's just like, that's the tough part, right? Like you kind of almost want him, right? Let's just say if Illy or Jack, or even you sub one of those guys off next to KDH, and kind of some of the other guys that come in the midfield. So it's just, for me, that's I think the frustrating thing is I think you would see a better product with better players around him, maybe a right back, right? But at the same time, I just think this is probably a season that we're probably not going to get the best of him. But that doesn't kind of make me lose hope for the future. It's just I think we're going to be waiting for a while in regards to seeing the best of Tyler Dibling.
Yeah, and I think we should probably note, because Ryan's not with us today, that at the time Moyes pulled Dibling, Ryan officially flipped his switch to being Moyes out. Ryan was beside himself that Dibling was being yanked off. I think we talked about the reasons why, because he is one of the only guys who's willing to take guys on off the dribble, and against that Sunderland defense, it didn't look like we would create anything any other way. We'll let Ryan speak for himself in future episodes, but we know what the perspective is, that Everton should be building for the future. You've made a massive investment in this kid who we know, went to Chelsea originally and kind of flopped there and had some struggles there, had to go back to Southampton, has now come to us and is now struggling again. It just feels like he could probably use an arm over the shoulder from the manager, and right now, maybe that's happening behind closed doors. Again, we just don't know. But from how he's being handled in games, it's just not really something that I don't feel he's being set up for success. And again, I do think the player has to take a little bit of responsibility as well. He does need to perform better, but I hope he continues to get minutes and opportunities to do it.
Yeah, and then so that kind of brings us to the end. Of course, one thing to note is the transfer window is still going on, right? And the guys did a great job of kind of looking at the targets, reviewing the targets from our summer PL preview, and then summer transfer preview, and then also looking at just kind of current needs assessment. The thoughts and prayers.
It's a right back.
It is a right back. It is a right back. And thoughts and prayers go to getting a right back. But then I just have one note, and that's for all the fellow losers in the FA Cup. There's quite a lot of us. Of course, we did not pull a Nottingham Forest or Crystal Palace, right? It's just Crystal Palace. You go from winning it to losing to, I believe, 6th-tier Macclesfield Town. That's not great. So I can at least take solace that we went to extra time, right?
And against a Premier League team.
And against a Premier League team that's, not Burnley or Wolves or West Ham. So you look at score predictions, none, right? There were a few that had the 1-1, but with us winning in extra time. So I'll give credit to, being very close. Of course, upcoming pod, we do have now kind of a nice back to schedule. So, of course, we got through this 5 games in 14 days. It was a lot. I can't imagine how the squad feels right now. And then we get to on the road to Aston Villa, which will be a very tough game. Tough way to break out of it, but hopefully we might have a body or two back. So any final thoughts, James?
Yeah, I do think we kind of got, in many ways, pretty unlucky today. I do think we're the deserved losers, but just by very nature of drawing another Premier League team in this round of the Cup, just kind of sucks. This was always going to be a tall order. It proved to be today. Does set the stage for kind of a low stakes remainder of the season. That battle between 9th and 15th wages on strongly. 1 draw and then 2 losses in our last 3. Not trending in the right direction, but I will say this squad has shown the ability to sort of have these crazy rebounds, bounce backs. I think this period of rest and training, get on the pitch, do some more tactical stuff, come back all the stronger against Villa, fingers crossed. And that's going to do it for us today on this episode of The Blue Frontier. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find all the links to our socials in the description. Leave us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate it very much. Appreciate the support. And we'll be with you next time. Until then, up the Toffees.